Yeah, that's a hi, Mark. How are you? Okay, we have an audio problem.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, now I got you. Listen, that was quite an intro. Now, I understand from a previous conversation that you and I had that this was a big discussion on your radio program.
It was huge, and it has really lit up the open carry boards, and not just Wisconsin, but the opencarry.org boards, and earlier today, I found out the Utah concealed carry and open carry boards as well too. It's a hot topic for a number of reasons, and I'd like to start, if I could, by reading a little something from our Bill of Rights. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
The right of the people. This is the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. We hear about the Fourth Amendment all the time, but we don't read it a lot, and we don't hear the actual words. What happened in Wisconsin is a fascinating situation. We had 5 gentlemen openly carrying their firearms, members of WisconsinCarry.org, who decided to have dinner at the Culver's restaurant in Madison. They were there for 2 hours, all 5 of them, with absolutely no incidents. When a passerby driving around the restaurant, who had apparently just had dinner there with her husband, noticed 2 of the armed men out on a picnic table or some type of bench out in front having a cigarette after their meal before they went back inside. She proceeded to call 911, politely and calmly asking if that was legal. The 911 dispatcher told her, after hearing the circumstances, it is a 5-minute and 27-second call, informed her that it was in fact legal if they were not doing any harm to anyone. Now enter 8 Madison police officers and police cruisers, James, that began, and they were, it was polite discussion, but they began asking for identification. So you can see where this is going here. We had 2 of the individuals refuse to give ID. The other 3 complied because they were under duress. They were under threat of arrest. So it was their decision at the time to give up their ID. They didn't want to get arrested at that point in time. The other 2 did. They were charged with obstructing justice. Those charges were later dropped the next day because they were illegal. The request for ID was illegal and violated their Fourth Amendment rights. And all 5 of the gentlemen were then later mailed citations for disorderly conduct. And of course, that it's been lighting up the concealed carry and open carry movement for the last couple weeks.
That's a lot of information, Mark. I mean, that's quite in-depth there. Let me just back up a little bit because you've already discussed this a lot. So let's answer the obvious questions first. So I'll start with the funny one. If that took place here, the lady would be calling because they were actually smoking. But okay, that's California. Beyond that, though, if a law enforcement officer approaches you and he asks you for some ID, you're not saying that that's illegal on the officer's part, are you?
Yes, unless he has probable cause that you are committing or violating a law or committing a crime, absolutely.
Okay, all right, let me stop you right there. Now, they respond to a call of armed men, and they come to that location, and they are asking, obviously, how come you guys are out here smoking cigarettes and carrying guns, whatever. And they go into the open carry sort of a dance where they say, well, it's perfectly legal for me to open carry. So the officers are saying, well, okay, I guess that's perfectly legal. I wonder if you could show me some identification.
Right.
That's wrong.
That is wrong, yes. They're under no obligation to show any identification when they are breaking no law. 2 of the individuals stood their ground and, of course, were arrested, as the officers told them they were going to be. The other 3 decided, I don't feel like getting arrested tonight. So they complied and showed their identification. Now, part of their argument here is, had we not complied and shown our ID, which they were under no obligation to do, the police department would have no way of knowing how to send them because their citations were mailed to them. Had they not given their identification, they would have had no idea where to send the citations for disorderly conduct to begin with.
I kind of understand that. I'm kind of looking at it from, okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I hate to use that cliche, but I'm going to be the opposite. I'm the cop.
Right.
Okay? I've been called out. Here's 4 guys smoking cigarettes, and they're all open carry. And I come up to them and I start to engage some sort of a conversation as to, we received a call that, there were 4 people out here with guns, and even though we know that that's legal, would you mind showing me some identification?
Right. That we play devil's advocate on Armed American Radio also. We got beat up quite a bit in a number of emails, although I have to say that the email that came in was running about 25-1 in favor of politely handing the officer the ID. Now you've got the hardcore folks that say, listen, I don't have to show ID, I'm not breaking any laws whatsoever. What's next?
Okay, okay, stop right there, because the guy that says to me, let's not use me. The man who says to the officer, no, I'm not showing you ID, no, you need probable cause for me to show you identification. Right. And the officer now decides that this is a combative conversation now.
That's right.
We've now escalated from may I or would you mind showing us. And now we have some resistance out here. And just across the board here, I can tell you that officer's level just jumped up, and now he's got 2 guys, they're armed, and they don't want to show me identification. Okay, now what charge am I arresting them for?
Well, they couldn't arrest them for any charge, quite frankly. They tried to arrest them for, they did arrest them for obstructing justice, but those charges were later dropped because they did not have probable cause to ask for ID to begin with. What's happening here is John Monroe, the attorney, these 5 men have become to be known as the Madison Five. The Madison Five and on Wisconsin Carry, on behalf of the Madison Five, has in fact last week sued Chief Noble Ray of the Madison Police Department and the department itself for violating the civil rights of the 5 individuals who were reminded now breaking no laws. The argument was made by John Monroe on Armed American Radio that in fact it was the officers who escalated the situation to begin with by asking for identifications because they had no legal right to do so. Now, it's an open call. People have asked me on the forum boards and in many emails, it's a slippery slope, Mark. Where do you draw the line? What next? Do they have the right to stop you and ask you for anything? Can they ask you for your Social Security number? Where does this end? Someone's got to take a stand. Quite frankly, open carry is lawful in Wisconsin. The Attorney General has sent a memo to all departments and heads and police department, sheriff's offices across the state advising them of that, and it's the law enforcement's responsibility to be armed with that knowledge. Now, the chief of the Madison Police, Noble Ray, is 100% violating that edict from the Attorney General of Wisconsin, and he will be educated very quickly because they will lose that lawsuit up there. It's not an open and shut case, as John Monroe said. There's never such thing as an open and shut case, but they're going to find out very shortly that they don't have the right to stop anybody for whatever reason. That's why the debate exists. No question. You raised the question when you mentioned that you're going to play devil's advocate. Many people, including my co-host at the time, Rob Pincus, says, give them the ID. Just give them the ID. Be polite about it and argue the case later. But don't assist in escalating a situation with 5 armed individuals that could or may have the potential to escalate into a very brutal situation, talking about somebody getting tased, somebody getting thrown to the ground, or worse, gunplay. So the argument has been a good one. And it continues to rage, no question.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. And I agree with Rob. And I would say to anyone out there, unless you just want to, I don't know, why would you want to escalate the situation? The officer asks you for an ID. Okay, and I'm pretty sure, now, none of us were actually standing there, and I guess we only have the word of the officers as well as the 4, the Madison Five. But, it's hard for me to believe that the way the officers are being taught today to handle people, that they probably didn't say something like, would you mind showing me an identification?
That may very well be, James. You bring up a good point. None of us were there. I do know, I have heard the entire 911 tape. The woman who called, and when she found out that these gentlemen were not breaking any laws of Wisconsin, she felt bad. She says, I don't want anything to happen to them. I just wanted to know if it was legal. I don't want anybody, you know, she was concerned about the fact and told the dispatcher, quite frankly, the call should have gone something along the lines of, ma'am, what they're doing is legal. If they're not bothering you or anyone else, thank you very much. It is legal in Wisconsin. That's how people get educated. And she did, in fact, tell her that. You know, this is a bad situation for the folks in Wisconsin. I don't have that problem here in Georgia. Now, I'm not saying that an officer might not stop me, but I can lawfully carry my gun here open as long as I have a permit. This is new to Wisconsin. And good people, like the two folks who refused to show that ID, are fighting the battle. All five of them fought the battle. But you know, everybody's going to have to be educated here. Rob's position was, we don't want anybody to get hurt during the educational process of what's happening up there. Right. These five gentlemen have an absolute right to carry those firearms. It has been mentioned, it is in Wisconsin law. They're not breaking any law. The officers had no reason under the Fourth Amendment to ask them for ID. They could have driven by and seen that there was no problem and driven on. So it's a raging debate, no question about it.